Order, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a roll call.
Mayor Hassler.
Here.
Alderwoman Cleghorn. Here. Alderwoman Johnson. Here. Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Jokers.
Here.
Alderman Eidman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince.
Here.
Alderwoman Armbruster.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Very good. Move for approval of the agenda. Move on that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, takes us down to a personal appearance by Mr. Jeffrey C. Stroder. You're up, my friend. Want to talk about the audit?
I guess you prefer me right here.
Yes.
Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate the opportunity to take care of the audit for the city. Looks like you've got quite a bit to do this evening, so I'll try not to take any more of your time than we need to. I wanted to explain what you have in that document, the bound document for your audit report. The first thing that we have is our report on your financial statements. It starts out by explaining that the city's responsible for the financial statements. My job as the auditor is to give an opinion on whether or not those financial statements are prepared properly. It explains in there that it is my opinion that the financial statements of the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining funds is presented fairly in all material respects, the assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenses of the city in accordance with the modified cash basis of accounting. That's a long sentence, but it's a key one. That's the one that makes it an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. That's the opinion that you want on your financial statements. Now it goes on for several more pages to highlight what my responsibilities are and what the city's responsibilities are. Most of it's the same kind of information that if you've looked at these reports before, you've seen. So I'll try not to go bore you too much with all those details. But it does explain close to the unit. There's a lot of additional information further back behind the financial statements and the note disclosures that's useful information to kind of help give some context to the numbers in the financial statements. It's not actually part of the financial statements, but we have applied procedures to that extra information as well, and we extend our opinion to that as well. The last part of that first report explains that I've conducted my audit in accordance with government auditing standards. And whenever I do that, there's a separate report that's required to be issued. So the second report that we have explains that I'm looking at the internal controls of the city that are related to financial statement preparation. So I'm not actually issuing an opinion on the internal controls, but I have to understand what controls are in place and whether or not they're working to be able to conduct my audit. So if I would find anything that I would consider to be a deficiency, this is where I would report that. Unfortunately, I've got one thing that I need to talk to you about this year. And I don't want to alarm you too much. This is not that big of a deal, and we've talked about this before. Whenever we find an error or any kind of a misstatement in the financial statements, if we recommend a correction, if it's material, that's now considered to be a deficiency in the internal controls. Used to be in years ago, if we found an error, we proposed a correction, we fixed it, we moved on down the road, and it's no harm, no foul. But there's been some rule changes for auditors a few years ago, and now that's considered a deficiency. What we found was that there was some payments made for infrastructure back in 2021. It's a little over $80,000 worth. The payments were voided, replacement checks were issued, the expenditures got coded in 2022. So they were 2021 expenditures. All it was an error in the timing of when it got reported. The expenditures were appropriate. They were recorded correctly for where they go, but they were in the wrong year, and that's where the error came about. So to correct it, all we had to do was restate the beginning balance to raise it back up, take the expenditures out of the current year, and that fixed everything. Like I said, the rules for auditors now say that that's automatic. It has to be disclosed as a deficiency, so that's why it's here in your report. But I really wanted to talk to you about it. You can kind of tell the difference between errors and things that are intentional problems. Like I said, this was just in the wrong year. It wasn't like it was anything that was trying to be hid. It was all in the right spots. So that's the only thing that we had to talk about with the deficiencies. The rest of the internal controls of the city that we felt would be appropriate for a city of the size We went through and obtained an understanding. We found out whether we felt that they were appropriately designed. We tested them for effectiveness. They were working. So we felt that everything else was appropriate as far as internal controls. Now, the second part of that report that we issue on internal controls has to do with compliance. So while we're doing our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we're looking at a variety of compliance issues, whether it be with contracts, grant agreements, regulations, state laws, federal laws, things of that nature that are financial related. And if we would find any instances of non-compliance, this report is where we would report those. And it goes on to explain we found no instances of non-compliance with any of the laws and regulations, contracts, grant agreements that we were testing for. So that is the nutshell version of the two reports that we issue that's in this document. Now, as far as the financial statements themselves, I normally, those of you who've heard me talk before, I don't spend a lot of time going back over your financial condition. I know you get reports and you're aware of your financial condition. So I don't want to spend a lot of your time going back over that. Usually I like to let you know whether there were anything that's new or out of the ordinary. And there was a new rule change on reporting that came into effect this particular year. This is the first time you'll see, if you look at these numbers, there's a couple of new accounts. And it has to do with the accounting for leases. And the city is the lessor. We've got some land that's leased. And that accounting used to be, whenever you would receive a check, it'd go into the rent income box, and then that's all we did with it. The rule change now says that when you've got these leases, if they're for multiple years, you record all of the amount that's due to you over future time periods, and it's recorded in as a receivable. Likewise, the future payments that are going to be coming in are recorded in a new section that you'll see that kind of stands out a little bit on the balance sheet. It's called deferred outflows or deferred inflows. And there's like a deferred lease revenue there. And that is also for the full amount of what revenue is going to be coming in future years. And then as the money comes in, that's when it'll get recognized as revenue, and it'll just lower that deferred revenue account. So it's kind of an unusual rule change, but if you're looking at those financial statements, you're going to see about a $500,000 lease revenue or receivable, and you'll see that deferred revenue amount for a similar amount. And just wanted to kind of explain why this $500,000 receivable appeared just out of nowhere this year. But that's what it was for. It was to implement the new reporting rule. So other than that, the financial information, the reports that you've got there, they're very similar to what you've had in past years. Generally in government finance, stability is kind of a good thing. So we didn't see anything else that would cause us any alarm or any cause for concern or anything that we needed to, or we felt we needed to bring to your attention. So at this time, if anybody would have any questions for me, I'd be glad to do my best to try to answer questions about what you've got in this report or what we did or what we found while we were working on the audit. Yes, sir.
Just one question and stuff, and not necessarily in detail what it was over, but this $80,000 thing, what it was that an end of the year, first of the year reconciliation thing, or?
I'm not sure I remember the exact dates on how close it was, but I think it was some checks that had been issued. They had to be replaced. Pam, maybe
I don't remember.
that's not something, okay.
It was one of our projects, either the water or street project, and we had a bill that came due, but the timing was across that budget year.
Right.
Right. I believe that's what it was, and I believe it was the sewer fund.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
So, but that is the right way to reconcile that, though, is to go back to the original date of the check, and then, was there some reason that check wasn't deposited or cashed or something, or?
I sure wish I could remember.
Sue would have been here tonight to answer that directly, but she was under the weather, and so she was not here to answer it directly. Sorry.
Yeah, I do remember it was an unusual situation. It's
Right.
not something that commonly pops up, and it just kind of got through the cracks, for lack of a better explanation.
But it was taken care of properly?
Absolutely.
Right. Good.
Well, one thing, at this point of the meeting, usually I thank the folks for having us here, and I excuse myself and I head right on out, but sometimes this is the case. I like to explain this if I get a chance to. I don't know how many of you get an opportunity to be here in City Hall and see how business is going on a day-to-day basis, but we did get that privilege for about a week. And I wanted to pass along to you that the experience that I had in my audit crew, everybody that we worked with, and which was quite a few people, it was a lot of work to put this together, but everybody was very professional, treated us very courteously, very helpful. Whenever we had questions, folks tried to answer our questions right away. So we really appreciated that. A lot of times I'll explain that it makes the life of an auditor a lot easier. And I tell you that not because I want you to be happy that I have such an easy life, but generally an auditor's life is easier when the folks he's auditing have accountability for what they've done. And that's what I hope you would take away from that.
So we also can say that having Jeff here was a change over the last couple of years because of COVID. It was nice having them in the office so we could look up what they needed, we could get it quickly. You can communicate back and forth, and it made it much easier. And they were great to work with.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. I know it's fascinating reading, and I know you'll want to read that book cover to cover. So if you come across something after you've had a chance to look at it that we didn't talk about tonight, and you do have a question, Happy knows how to get in touch with me. I'll be glad to try to help out.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jeff.
How many years? Wasn't there multiple years in this contract?
This is a 3-year term.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
That's
the
the
first
first
year.
year of the 3 years?
So we look forward to seeing you again next year.
Yeah, they were here before, yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Takes us to our city administrator's report.
I don't have an updated report. I've got the one that came in the packet just to highlight a couple of things. Dave Van Leer from Cochrane will be here on the 23rd for the work session that night. We're going to talk about stormwater. So we're going to sit down with him, with staff next Friday, kind of go over it, see if there's any changes, any issues that we can clarify before the next meeting that next Thursday. So if you can be here for that. And the sidewalk repair notices have been sent out to property owners requiring sidewalk repairs. I think some of the board members want to talk about this later on, but Community Development's in charge of that. They are out there. We received 3 letters ourselves because of 3 issues that we have, so we'll have to be moving forward to get those repaired. Any questions about anything else on the report? Looking good.
Have you had any requests in response to our ad for the Progress Parkway property?
No, I'm not really expecting anything until probably in March, but I have not had any feedback or any questions about it at this point.
Because that ad just ran this past week locally, correct?
So it ran last week in the Farmington paper, this week in the local paper, and then we've sent out packets to various real estate agents.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Happy. Takes us to our staff reports. David Bowie, you're up first.
Good evening. You've got my report there. Just going to highlight a few items under Heritage Commission. We did have SHPO, the CLG coordinator, John Peterson, performed the CLG evaluation on the 23rd, which was the day of the meeting. Came back meeting all standards, and he just said that the Heritage Commission is doing a good job. So kudos to those folks, and thanks to them for serving on that board. Grants manager Andrew Dial was with him and went over some grants, one of them being the Paul Brune that you all approved application for a meeting or 2 ago, and we did get that application submitted. So that, keep our fingers crossed. Building department numbers you see there. Under that, I mentioned that the sidewalk repair letters were mailed out last week. Under comprehensive plan, you can see the public survey closed last week. We had 453 survey responses. I discussed this a few weeks ago, but we'll now get together with the RPC and meet with staff and then pull our steering committee back together and move on to the vision development stage of that process. Planning and zoning, we talked here in a work session about tiny homes, but they took a look at 3 different ordinance changes at planning and zoning meeting, approved all three, and we'll be bringing those to you on the 23rd. I did want to add, one of those changes has to do with home occupations and some changes in state statute that we now have to put in our code that allow owner occupants and tenants to perform home occupations without a special use permit, but that does not apply to guest lodging. That's not an owner-occupied use typically. So those, in a residential neighborhood, those would still need special use permit. That's really all I wanted to highlight. If you have any questions.
Thank you,
All right,
David.
thank you.
Thank you, David. Tourism Director Tanner Lane.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Well-
Basically, you have my notes, and so this kind of gets a little granular into Facebook impressions, and so forth and so on. And actually, I'm probably going to revamp this. And so you have my email address, and I would invite everyone to kind of let me know what my key performance indicators are that you would like me to report on, because I can go just about anywhere. For tonight, though, I do want to say that I'm kind of digging into all of the assets, primarily the website and your social channels. So with regard to the website, I'm going to really spend a lot more time in there, because after all, that is your presence to the outside, the greater outside world. And so right now, I did an audit check today, actually, looking for broken links, and I have a whole checklist that I'm going through. And then also, likewise, I'm doing that with the Missouri Tourism website, and see if we can update a lot of the content and correct it and so forth. So anyway, I would welcome, if you want to drill into any of the details, I'd be happy to provide you with anything. I'm really new getting into it, so, but I'll share with you what I can. Any questions? No? Okay, great.
Thank you. Chief Staggert.
Good evening, everyone. You should have a copy of my report, too. A couple things I'll bring to your attention is personnel. We have a couple of guys that aren't as active as we'd like to, so we sent out some probationary letters telling them that they need to improve. At that point, we had one guy that quit, but we signed up somebody else. We're still holding about 27 of 29 rostered spots that we have. I anticipate one more to probably turn in his stuff or be asked to leave after a 6-month probation, because he hasn't really responded to anything we've done. But we're still holding the 27 to 29 range, which is good for a community our size. As far as training, we did hold an alternate vehicle or alternate fueled vehicle class by the University of Missouri, and we went into things with the university about electric powered cars and natural gases and all those kind of things, kind of get us aware of what kind of emergencies we could see in it. I also started last month and have another round next week of an enhanced leadership series for the fire service, and that will deal with, or has in the past so far dealt with personalities and how to deal with difficult people and things like that. My next session will be in Jeff City on next Tuesday, dealing with the politics side of it, and then we get into more labor relations and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of an advanced leadership type thing. We also have 4 guys that started the Firefighter 1 and 2 program down in Cape. We try to get as many guys in there as we can. These 4 were some that could actually work it around their schedule, so we're looking forward to have those guys complete that in May. They should be able to sit for the state certification testing, and that should bring us back up to about a 75% compliance on that too. Also, along training, I don't have it on here, but I found out the other day that anybody that's interested in the ISO information, the people that audit us and tell us what kind of fire rating we would have, they will have a class on Saturday, March 11th at the 911 Center in Farmington, and that would be open to anybody from fire departments or their administrative boards and things like that. So if anybody's interested in sitting in on that, let me know, and I can make arrangements for a seat for you. I currently have 4 guys going, myself and a couple other guys going over. And probably the only other thing I'd bring to your attention, and anybody had seen the Facebook post of today, our technical rescue team actually got deployed on Tuesday. And we got deployed because of a prize hunting dog that got stranded off of a hillside out to Magnolia Hollow Reserve. It was about 50 foot down. We were able to set up our ropes and actually lower a fireman down to grab the dog and lower him the rest of the way to the ground safely. And in the post on Facebook, I kind of put a note in there about some people may say, why so much hubbub for a dog? But it gives us a chance to sit up and operate on an animal before a person's life is actually in danger. So everything went smooth. We had about 8 or 10 guys working the scene and got the dog down, and the owner was just thrilled to death with it.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
What do you train on if there was a confined space rescue? Are you're department trained? You got trained guys to rescue?
Back in, I forget what year exactly it was. I think it was 2012 or 13. We had the University of Missouri come down, and we did a 40-hour class on confined space. We had a 40-hour class on rope rescue and some other classes like that. I myself am technician level on those. We have several other guys that are technician level on different versions. So if we actually would have a technical rescue type situation, I've got guys that can go on the ropes, and all the rest of them are trained to support people. They know that this rope's got to go here, whatever, but we don't let them get on a rope unless they've gone through the appropriate training. But we're capable of rope rescue up to 400 feet. So if we would have somebody on a silo somewhere here, we could go up and get them down or whatever it takes.
What about Anakin? Like if a guy was working in a sewer or somewhere in town and was overcome?
We carry 2 tripods on our technical rescue trailer, and I have a confined space air system with escape bottles that we can go up to 300 foot from the water source,
That's awesome.
or from the air source.
Then my next question is on a water rescue, who takes lead on that? I know there was a report of a guy or a body in the river, but if there were true, because you're not equipped to, up in St. Louis, the fire department's called for all that stuff. Confined space, water rescues, everything. Now they got the equipment to do it because you don't have a boat or nothing to get out on the water.
We have limited water rescue capabilities. I do have swift water vests, helmets, and throw ropes, and a flotation device. We also have what they call a hose inflator. I can inflate a 2.5-inch hose and shove it out there.
Yeah.
But we're limited within 50 foot of the
Yeah.
tank.
Right.
Anything over and above that, we call the sheriff's department, and hopefully they can get one of their boats out.
Right.
They actually have a great big safe boat that goes on the river. I think it's 32 feet or something like that, and they have a couple smaller John boats.
Well, a lot of times too, like up there, they'll call like I know there's a towing company over there that assists, and we'll haul the fire department out onto the river. So
We haven't had to do that yet, but we have Coast Guard hailing channels in our walkie-talkies and our mobiles, so we can reach tugboats and ask questions and have them look for people and things. The closest boat to us that's a fire-related boat, is actually Chester.
right.
They have one through a surplus property program that last time we were called, it was an evening where they thought they had a boat afloat out there on its own.
Yeah.
They were actually called, put on standby, and I had phone contact with them, and we were contacting the barges on the river to keep track of what was going on. We never did find that boat, so
Yeah.
we think it was somebody just floating, and then they started up and drove away.
That's cool. Just wanted to know the capabilities. Thank you.
Any
Any other
questions?
questions?
What do you need in order to order the radios? You said you're waiting on permission.
That's waiting from the federal people that give us the grant. It was a long process on the first one, and we're still running into some technical difficulties on the billing part of it. I don't know what the holdup is on that. I received a request today from the second round of radios asking for an updated quote, so it sounds like they're getting ready to give us permission to go ahead and order the second round of radios. No,
Okay, thank you.
it's the typical grant thing that just drags its feet. It's out there, and we've been told we're been awarded. We're just waiting for permission to order.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Good. Kenny, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any committee reports? Okay. Takes us down to, is there any public comments?
Got one real quick.
Yes, sir?
Joe Steiger, 549 Glenda. Last meeting, you guys voted on a small project. I think it was up on Blaine Street. Some landscaping. It was like an $8,000 bid on that. I can't remember what the policy was at, but there was two local contractors that also bid on it, and one was within $150. And so I was just wondering what the policy is, if you guys have one, towards issuing bids towards local contractors compared to out-of-town contractors. So just, and I don't know if you guys have an answer for that, but that was my question.
Thank you. Because we had discussed that, I know, Bob, you brought that up, so. Alrighty. Takes us to the consent agenda. We got a hand up.
Yeah, they're
Oh, hand it all.
All good? Move approval.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Takes us to old business. Takes us to the second reading of bill number 4534, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement between the city of St. Genevieve and St. Genevieve County for the county to provide 911 dispatching services for the calendar year 2023.
Move approval.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Yes. Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderwoman Claghorn. Yes. 8 yes, 0 no's. Bill number 4534 now becomes ordinance 4458.
Thank you. Takes us to the second reading of bill number 4535, an ordinance amending the city of St. Genevieve Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 210, offenses.
Motion. Second?
Have a roll call, please.
Alderwoman Claghorn.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster. 8 yes, 0 no's. Bill number 4535 now becomes ordinance 4459.
Thank you. Takes us to the second reading of bill number 4538, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a revised contract with Wegman Law Firm, authorizing a rate increase for legal services.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Yes. Alderwoman Claghorn.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yep.
8 yes, 0 no's. Bill number 4538 now becomes ordinance 4460.
Thank you. Takes us to new business. Need the approval of the bid from Sentinel Emergency Solutions for the purchase of 4 sets of turnout gear in the amount not to exceed $11,379.38.
Motion to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Takes us to bill number 4539, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a proposal for professional engineering services with Cochran Engineering for the 9th Street Improvement Project.
Motion to approve?
I only wanted to point out on that there's a reference to City of Deloge that needs to be cleaned up on that with regard to the preliminary design phase. And that's a letter from Cochran. I believe they meant to put St. Genevieve, and they probably put Deloge, so.
Good job, Mike.
Just need to
It's
clean
going to
that
be a
up.
boilerplate type of contract.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
change it.
I just hate to see it move to its final state and voted on with that reference in there.
All right.
I don't recommend we don't vote on it, I just recommend we clean that up, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, clean that up. I have a first. Is there a second?
I would second that.
You'll second it? All in favor?
Aye.
Move for second reading.
And I'll second that.
All
as
in
well.
favor?
Aye.
Second reading of bill number 4539, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a proposal for professional engineering services with Cochran Engineering for the 9th Street Improvement Project.
Motion to approve?
And I'll second it.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderwoman Clegg-Harn.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Yes. Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no's. Bill number 4539 now becomes ordinance 4461.
Thank you. This is Bill number 4540, an ordinance of the City of St. Genevieve, Missouri, approving a tax-exempt equipment lease purchase agreement with First State Community Bank for the purchase of 2 police vehicles.
For approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion for a second reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Takes us to the second reading of Bill number 4540, an ordinance of the City of St. Genevieve, Missouri, approving a tax-exempt equipment lease purchase agreement with First State Community Bank for the purchase of 2 police vehicles.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Have the roll call, please.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Yes. Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderwoman Clegg-Harn.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no's. Bill number 4540 now becomes ordinance 4462.
Thank you. This is to the first reading of Bill number 4541, an ordinance of the City of St. Genevieve, Missouri, amending the personnel manual as set forth below.
We didn't see any legal issues with
No,
this change.
no. This is what's recommended by the state, and I've had Mr. Bishop look it over
Okay.
closely.
There you go.
And I make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there any other business? Anything we need to communicate?
Well, wanted to talk about that situation with our sidewalk issue and stuff. And one, I wanted to clarify too, that we can make a repair of the existing width of a sidewalk, that we don't have to go to fully code.
David, can you come up? Sure. Go ahead. There you go. I just wanted him to hear because he's,
Oh,
yeah.
just wanted to make sure, Dave, that if we have a situation like that, we're possibly just taking out a section of a sidewalk, you know, not taking the whole thing out and stuff, can we go back with just that existing width and not bringing it up to the 42 or 48 inches that our code requires?
I mean, these are one-off situations that we can certainly discuss, and if you all approve of a situation of that nature, we can do that. But I would, want the concrete to have meet the specs that are in our book.
Right,
Yeah.
right. No, I'm just talking about the width, that, if there's a 3-foot sidewalk there, I don't want to go back and take out a couple sections and put in 42 inch. I want to leave it as the same existing, where that's acceptable. And how do we go about doing that? If we cite somebody for a violation, are we detailed with them, telling them exactly what's the matter, furnishing photographs?
We sent them a letter with, like, if they lived on a corner lot, which side the issue was on. We received some calls for clarification this week and gave that clarification, but we didn't provide pictures or anything of that nature.
Right. I think it would be to our advantage if we could provide, something, what is in violation and stuff in detail. I don't know, I've never seen one that you've sent out, maybe it is, but I just think we could be in detail what the problem is and how much needs to be repaired, I guess, or replaced.
We can provide that as we go forward.
Okay? And in particular cases, because you're talking about a one-on-one then, to where we cite somebody, we're going to tell them in pretty much detail what's the matter. And do we offer them anything at the time as far as solutions?
Well, no one who's receiving these letters, unless the ownership has changed hands in the past year, which there is one case of that at least, has not already received a letter stating that we adopted a new sidewalk reimbursement program last year that offers them up to $750 to do the repairs themselves. The letter also reiterates that that program is available to them if they choose to make the repairs themselves.
So I guess I never caught up with that. It is for repairs or replacement or new sidewalks.
Not new.
This is a program that you all adopted about a
Right.
year and a half ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cover new.
No.
You know, the one particular case that came up in our ward, you know, I guess the letter and the term lien, you know, to a lot of people don't understand what that means and stuff, and it's a little tough, I guess. But, I mean, do we not have any program out there to where we can, I guess maybe be a little less tough in the wordage, or,
I mean, respectfully, everyone who received the letter received an offer a year ago to make the improvements with reimbursement.
right,
And then a
Okay.
year was given. And now these letters, Mr. Kurtz drafted the letter, I assisted him, and we made sure to put in there that the $750 is now still available, up to
so
$750.
that was in there.
Absolutely, there's
Right,
I have
okay.
a copy of the letter here if you'd like to look at it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it and stuff.
And, you know, we can certainly, again, answer any questions that we have, that people have on a lien. You know, if the repairs aren't done by, and we also put in the letter that you don't necessarily have to get the repairs done right now. We know the weather could be prohibitive.
Right,
But you could contract to get the weather done, or give us the date that the weather done, get the work done, or give us the date that the work will be done by, you know, within 30 days. If not, and the city has to do the work, then a lien could be placed upon the property if you choose then not to pay the bill. And that lien would be recorded. It would not mean that you get, you know, I think this is what you're alluding to. It doesn't mean that you get kicked out of your house or someone comes knocking on your door. There's just a lien recorded against the deed that would have to be addressed before you sold your house.
right. So there's also costs involved with us obtaining that lien.
I mean, when we record a lien, it's approximately $25.
Right. You know, just hoping there was just a little more personal way that we could deal with some of these. You know, so if somebody comes in and talks to us, once they receive the letter, if they come in and talk to us, that would initiate possibly some leniency or,
Do you want us to provide some leniency?
well, no, I'm asking if, you know, if somebody comes in and talks and says, you know, I've got this situation going on, I can't afford to do this right now, you know, can there be some leniency then, I guess, to work with them as far as the
I mean,
time?
if someone were to come in and say, can we have 2 months? Can, you know, obviously you've alluded to the fact that, you know, maybe it's just 2 sections that need to be done. Absolutely. I mean,
Right.
we've operated that way with nuisances ongoing.
Right,
But, you know, I keep reiterating this. Everyone has the ability to do the repairs and get up to $750 back from the city. That program exists.
right,
One thing we have found in the code enforcement is you have to put a time limit on it. If you don't put a time
Right.
limit on it.
I
you're not
understand
gonna
that.
response.
I
Well,
just
and-
understand that not everybody has the same financial ability to make those repairs, and that's what,
And I think though, Bob, you have to put, there's got to be some onus on the homeowner to make an effort, once you get a letter, to come into City Hall and have a civil discussion.
Right,
A lot of
that's what I-
times, it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
It happens that somebody's mad about it and tempers flare, but that's where it's got to start, you know.
Being proactive at the first letter, I think,
Right.
is
Right.
key, asking your questions then.
And it's a hard pill to swallow, but we did, the same thing happened when we did code enforcements 6 years ago on painting and stuff like that. And people got on board. Getting started was tough, but I totally agree with you. And there's certain situations, but I look at it this way, and I understand the lien, but if we do the work and the lien, they have the opportunity to pay that back, because we give a person an opportunity. I believe up here, we had to tear a garage down and give that person, she come in, she talked, and give them the opportunity to pay off on that and pay that back until that was clear. So I think we're doing a pretty good job there. It's just people got to come in and communicate that.
Well, but that's the one point I wanted to bring out, if they come in and talk, they're civil about it and stuff, then there's things we can do.
Always has been,
Yeah.
and will continue to be so.
Did we get much response from those first letters that went out in 2021? I know
don't
no one
believe-
took advantage of the funds, but I'm just curious.
Correct. I don't believe anyone who received a letter made the repairs. We did have two
Right.
individuals take advantage of the program you all adopted.
Okay.
I don't believe they were recipients of the
Right.
letters.
But you don't recall getting, I know it's been a while, but you don't recall getting calls or visits about those initial letters?
Questions like, what does this mean? What do I have to do? What do I have to do it by? Anything like that.
Maybe one or two
Okay.
just inquisitive calls about the ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that's what I was wanting to do, is make it clear that if we're taking out 5 sections, and we go, and a lot of these sidewalks are only this wide, well, we don't want 3 sections, just go back to original,
We can do that.
in the middle. Now, I can understand that if it's in a corner, where you're gonna put a handicap, but I just wanna make sure that's clear, And I don't think a lot of people, maybe they don't understand that, I don't know. But if we're gonna take out a whole one, we need to make it handicap accessible, I believe.
I mean, we would want to bring it to code.
Right.
Absolutely. And, just to reiterate, we would work and will work and have worked with anyone who has any questions or needs to be worked with on these situations, including, what Happy mentioned, the fact that we ourselves have at least 3 instances, the city, that we need to make repairs.
And we had talked about that during our budget process this last time, that if we're gonna go through and enforce this as hard as we're planning to, that we would address our sidewalk issues this next year, so.
Any other questions, Bob, or,
No,
very good?
just, communications is key, and people understanding all of the possibilities helps.
When
Yes.
future letters go out, we can certainly either attach a photo or be more specific.
Well, but I think, the amount of non-response kind of tells us something.
Yeah.
How many of those letters went out and how many actually responded? 2?
I believe we sent out 40 letters. This is a year ago.
Right.
And again, I don't think there were any of those recipients that responded
Right.
by improving their sidewalk.
Right. So that means there was a lot of questions, possibly.
Okay. Is there any other business? There's no other business, so I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, my friend. The work session order, please. Move for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy, it's all yours.
So we discussed at last week's work session about the Assistant City Administrator position. I thought I would offer you the opportunity to look at what I drafted for a job description. If you have any input, anything you want to pass along. Again, this is a staff position, so it goes through me. It doesn't go through the board to hire. That's limited to just the city administrator, but everybody was on board when we discussed this, but I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback, a little understanding of what I'm thinking of in relation to that position. This was not included with our salary survey because we're after the fact, so that's kind of just left out there at this point. it may be included in future reviews.
It was my understanding that this position was going to be rolled in together with the current position that we already have. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I had a few people ask me about that.
So it's not adding to the staff, it's
Correct.
rearranging
It's
the duties. of
Change of
each
title,
position.
basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, expanding what those duties are, and then putting somebody that is definitive in the organizational chain that follows after me if I'm not here, if I'm not available, and defining what those responsibilities are.
But the community develop, the position to oversee the community development, that is on the survey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So between your position and that position, we can potentially have a gauge, even if it's not specific.
Right, right. Okay. No questions? All right, second up is the part-time fire chief. We budgeted for this, discussed it. It was asked that we table it and bring it back at a future date. This is the future date. So we budgeted $38,000 to pay for the position of part-time fire chief. Discussion also wrapped around paying those other officers, instead of doing a part-time chief, paying the other officers more, doing something for the other volunteers. I mean, there was just a number of issues that were kind of brought up and talked about, and at that point, it's like, let's not worry about a part-time fire chief at that time. That was brought up in our budget discussions, brought to the board to discuss, and it went through the process of approving the part-time fire chief / $38,000, but we got to the finish line, so to speak, and at that point, the brakes were put on assigning somebody or hiring somebody as a part-time chief. So the question is, do you want to move forward with it? I mean, I've given you 4 options. Hire a part-time chief, allocate those funds throughout the volunteer fire personnel. You can keep the funds set aside, but not using them for a part-time chief in fiscal year 2023. Reallocate the funds for another purpose in the fire department, or set them aside for a fire truck. It's like a smorgasbord.
How,
You can only choose one.
how far out are we from the salary survey?
I had somebody else ask me that recently. We were looking at a 8 to 12 week window, so we are just at the 6 weeks. So we're a couple of weeks from getting close to maybe seeing a rough draft of it internally and then giving feedback. So you're looking at getting anything probably till March.
Well, I personally I would love to see us go forward with, you all have to live with it, but my personal opinion is to see us is at least go forward to, and maybe you don't do the whole $38,000 for your chief this year, but maybe you drop that, you allocate the funds to some of the rest of them, and then work in next year's budget to raise that up to move forward with that. So, and that's all I'm going to say on it. So it's all your baby.
And the chief is here if you have any questions about what his goals are for that position.
Ashley, you were up first.
So I've been pretty adamant about the salary study, and I want to hold to that. I don't know if 38,000 is the right number, and that's not any question about the chief's abilities or the position at all. I don't know what that number is, like what those positions get paid. I have some information that Kenny's given us from other departments, but I don't know where everything falls yet. So I do kind of hesitate to allot it all right away without that salary survey, but I'm not opposed. I think we can take some small steps forward. The chief is currently stipend at about $7,000 per year. I don't have any issue with raising that. Whether it's 10,000, 15, or 20, whatever. But I'd also like to try to find ways to bring some extra incentive to the volunteers that are not chief. Currently, they get $30 once per month for training meetings. If they attend, up to $360 for the year. And then the department pays every 6 months $30 per meeting for first 6 months if they make at least 75% of the calls. $360 capped a year for somebody that's willing to run into a building that's burning, or leave their family dinner table on holidays because somebody left the turkey in the oven, and things like that. $360 just doesn't seem like it does it. But that is tied to the training, so whether we go to raising the training payment or putting a per call stipend out there, I'm open to either of those, but I do think we need to at least find some incentive for the volunteers.
Well, that's what I said, you lower that, you already got the 38,000 budgeted,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe this year you start, say, this figure with Kenny, and then utilize the rest, and then kind of work towards that, and then find out what your salary, what that base would be, and then at least move forward. You already got a budget, it's just, I think you need to really move forward on it.
Because I believe there is definitely a benefit to having a part-time chief in our community. With the struggles of volunteerism, throughout the community.
Well, we've been fortunate. You've heard Kenny, we've got 27, I mean.
Yeah,
and
we've got an incredible group of folks that are volunteering on our fire department.
Believe me, they don't do it for the money.
No.
So, but it is nice to be recognized that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But there is certainly a benefit to having a part-time chief with, every time there's a call like that, there's paperwork that has to get filed on those calls. Kenny was telling us about, he was at the firehouse one day, and instead of calling, 911 or dispatch, somebody called the firehouse to ask a question about their smoke alarm. And Kenny was able to address that because he was at the station to answer the phone.
I think we'd be able to do more of that.
Oh, carbon monoxide, I'm sorry.
Just a couple of numbers I can throw out to you. And actually, right now, if you offered me a position as part-time chief, I'd have to respectfully decline at the moment because I'm on disability for my full-time job with a knee injury. So what I've been doing is taking the extra time that I have when my mowing business is shut down for the winter and spending that time out there. This week, by the time 8 o'clock rolls around the night, I'll have 39 hours invested already this week in hours, either at the firehouse or in other meetings and things like that. So right now, I couldn't take a part-time position because of disability. I'm hoping that an injection later this month might get me moving towards getting healed and get back on the truck. So for the part-time chief, my goal tonight would be having you see the benefit for the city of it happening and somewhere down the road proceeding with it. I am 100% behind doing something for my guys. I'd love to have that. In sitting out there as many hours as I've been doing, that day was a carbon monoxide detector. She says, I don't think anything's wrong, but I want to have somebody check it. So I went down and took care of it. I've had 6 or 7 calls in the last month and a half where I've just handled things and not had to page the department out. I've also been there for 13 or 14 calls over the last couple months where the call came out and it needed a fire response. So I was there, we were able to get a truck moving quicker than if we had to have 2 guys come to the firehouse to get one. So there was a benefit there too. And one other benefit of me being there is the guys feel more open to coming into the firehouse and asking me questions or dealing with things on a day-to-day basis. So by me being there, kind of attracts other guys to hang around the station too. And we have guys manning the station there. So once again, it's quicker response out. We're dealing with phone calls from insurance companies on a daily basis and things like that too that goes into it. Plus the Knox box program going in, helping people with keys and setting up Knox boxes and things. There's a lot of stuff goes on. If you think about day-to-day business, the world is run on a day-to-day business 9 to 5. And if we have somebody there, we can do that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I'm trying to make phone calls at night, arranging for repairs, or trying to be there for a repair during the week, or finding somebody that can be there in my place where if we have a little bit more organized and have somebody there, it's easier to set all those things up.
And there's also the addition of all the work that goes into planning for their training sessions. Yeah, I've attended a couple of their training sessions. One of them was an agricultural training where they brought in there's a grain bin.
University of Missouri Grain Bin Rescue.
Yeah, and multiple guys from multiple departments locally attended that, and it's very eye-opening to see some of the work that they do, but to help plan and orchestrate that level of training for our small community is a lot of work, and it's certainly deserving, so.
Not only that, is documenting all that stuff and making sure that it's in somebody's file that they have this training. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
So if we actually were to say, okay, we want to do both part-time and help all of the volunteers, would the committee be comfortable getting together and coming up with something? And in the meantime, we're waiting for the salary study. So I think that if we could have some sort of a proposal from the committee, and then the salary study comes back, we would be able to better allocate and more equitably allocate those funds.
Well, Bob's up first. He's been trying to get us.
Kenny, you might as well come up. Sorry on the knee, but.
No problem.
You know, a couple things and stuff is, one, what is your time frame? You know, I know you said you couldn't now because of a temporary thing, but you talked about retiring from your current position to where you would be able to take over the full, or the part-time.
With my schedule, whenever I'm working, I work a 48-hour shift, so that leaves me 3 days during the week that I'm not working. So if it was to implement it, I would go back to work on my regular schedule, and that the disability go away, I could start it as soon as I went back to work. But my plan right now is to retire January of 25. So in a year and a half, or basically 2 years, I'd be retired and have whatever free time I needed to do it. The one thing that would have to be figured in on it too is a flexible type schedule, because I not only have meetings during the daytime, like department head meetings and things like that, but also like last night, I went to a Bi-County Chiefs meeting over in St. Francis County. Didn't get home until 10 o'clock last night, and I started at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, having Minor Shagan come back over. We have a little drip yet, so 9 o'clock in the morning I started, and other than going home for lunch, I was going until 10 o'clock last night on fire department business. So it'd have to be kind of flexible too. But majority of the time, I'd like to have somebody there at the station during the daytime, like a 9 to 5 type thing, as much as possible. And initially, whenever I presented this request or presented this idea, I was looking at, first of all, honestly, part of it is my mowing business. I make about $30,000 a year, and that takes up a lot of my time, where if I was to be able to replace some of that income, I could put more time towards the fire service, because it takes a lot of time. And I also looked at things like Festus. Festus just hired a fire chief, and he's making about $65,000 a year with a full-time job as a fire chief. So I looked at promising about 24 hours a week, from my standpoint, at about half of what a full-time pay would be, is how I came up with those numbers. Farmington's had a full-time chief for about 30 years, and I think he's making in the $45,000 to $50,000 range, so not quite as high as Festus. Perryville still has a stipend chief like I am, but they also have a assistant chief who is a assistant chief for the police department, and he sits at a desk all day long. He's able to make those daytime phone calls or make arrangements for some of that stuff.
So are you talking about, you said having somebody there 9 to 5 on days when you couldn't be there?
Just me for now, because all of my guys have full-time jobs. I'm fortunate enough with my job that I work 48 hours, so I have other additional days available. I'm not your traditional Monday through Friday, 5 days a week type employee person.
So with the discussion that's going on in the county, that Mike and Ashley and I attended the meeting and stuff, and don't want to get into that yet because it's still early. I mean, how would that affect this position then?
It would probably dissolve it, depending on what would happen with that other option.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that happens, then we just do something else.
Well, you're looking at a whole different setup, so.
Right.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be involved in
You
it.
won't.
That'd be up to a voter's decision.
Right.
If the voters pass
Yeah.
it, we would just dissolve, find a way to
They'd
dissolve.
have their own board.
Yeah.
I think for in the time being, because that might be some time off and stuff, I think the part-time position is beneficial whether we reduce that amount somehow and pass out some money. I mean, we need to do something.
Yeah, I agree.
Joe, you have a question?
No, it was regarding the last thing that Bob added on there, but, I mean, this is nothing towards you whatsoever. You know, each month, each month we get your report, and, you know, we get, we're down one officer, we're down this, we're down, I'm not saying that your position's not worth it, and what you do isn't worth it, but I would like to see either a chunk of that or a chunk from somewhere else to help with retention. We don't have a problem retaining, you know, the chief, or not yet anyway.
We hope we won't, but.
You know, I would like to see an incentive to help him keep his guys also, or, you know.
Well, that's what I say,
And
you got
like
some-
I said, I'm not against, I just think if we're gonna do something, it needs to benefit the whole department.
Well, it's
And having a chief will
Yeah.
benefit the department. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it wouldn't, but I'd like to see something go towards, you know, the rest of them as well.
Well, that's why I
somehow.
say you put your
Yeah.
committee back, get your committee working on that, and figure that out, and then bring it back.
Yeah, I think what we were lacking was really the direction, right? Because we had this, how many different ways can we go with this? And it's how do we, you know, without talking to you guys, how do we, you know, narrow this down? And
Well, right now
we
you-
haven't really been able to do that, but now with this discussion.
And you got some budgeted money to work
Yeah.
with, so you gotta work with Kenny. I think now's the time to attack this and go forward.
Yeah. Kenny, do you have any idea what kind of dollar amount we pay out, less, you know, your stipend and the maintenance people's stipends that they get, just in the everyday firefighters? Any idea what total amount we pay out?
I want to say last year, because we do pay on a per basis for attendance, we paid about $6,200 or $6,400 out of the $8,000 we had budgeted.
And that was just to the guys that
Just
show
to
up?
the guys for the
So-
training meetings is all they get right now. They don't get a paper call, they don't get, on Wednesday night, we got the paid staff that comes in and works for a few hours. Anybody else that comes in over and above that is doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
Anybody that comes in and sits at the firehouse and talks to me, they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Reasonable pay per call has to be on the table, because there's no way we can ask somebody to volunteer, go to a fire and be out of pocket money because they had to put gas in the tank or get a sitter. I mean, that can't happen.
We have been, probably.
We have, but
Right.
we need to make it right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
You know, we need to cover them insurance-wise, we need to cover any equipment they put on their vehicles to get to the firehouse.
Within the best of our ability.
Right.
We need to do that.
Right now, whenever somebody joins up, they do get life insurance through us, and they also have workman's comp. I do issue one blue light and a siren eventually to them, so we do give them a little bit of equipment, but with a limited budget, I can only do so much with it. And you guys have been generous to us, we're making do, but there's always the wish for more, obviously.
So we'll go back to work with the committee and
Yep.
come up, okay? You'll be, most surely will be involved in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kenny.
Happy, you have anything else?
Do you?
Happy's got something else.
Oh,
Wait a minute, it's not on the agenda.
Can't do it. Nobody has to vote on anything. Just to let you know, this is some of the questions we had with the employee benefits, asking, you know, sending out some questionnaires on that and looking at numbers. So, and I'll bring this back at the next meeting, but just to kind of give you a heads up, the question was on vacation leave benefits, if we increase everybody a week. It doesn't affect the city hall side because we cover when people are gone, but for the police side was the question. So if, based on, and everybody is right at that right at that point that they're moving from, you know, let's say 2 weeks to 3 weeks, 3 weeks to 4 weeks. So we would add on another 10 weeks of vacation for the police department. If you had somebody fill that in, that's a regular full-time officer, a time and a half, it's an $11,000 increase in the time that we would have to pay for overtime. That's not taking into account the reduction you would have because if the chief or the lieutenant take off, they probably aren't going to be replaced. Nobody's going to fill in for them. So it's going to be under $11,000. And then you have part-time police officers and all that to also cover some of those shifts. But that was one of the questions.
We also had a questionnaire go out to all the employees on what they preferred. Again, we'll go through this specifically, but just to give you a heads up, through the City Hall and police side, the retirement plan was voted down. The personal day, instead of a Good Friday, was voted down. Community paid benefit hours was also voted down. So there's just no interest in that. I didn't put the vacation one on there because I didn't want to see that get voted down. So we'll bring back some. I had a number of things drafted to bring back to try to adopt, but it looks like a number of things will just stay the same. But I will bring back the vacation one, but just keep in mind what that cost is. I think that's something though that we need to really consider and bring to the table for employees.
So that was the only thing that you feel like the employees would get behind or would be in support of. The other things didn't have much interest.
So he also asked about jeans, tennis shoes, and
Yeah.
business casual. That was voted down, but that's also including the police department. So if we're going to include both sides, you're going to have a difference of opinion because police side has paid uniforms, whereas City Hall has their own. So we'll get into more of the details on that when I bring it back.
Okay.
But just kind of keep you up to date.
Thank you.
All I've gotten. I'm sorry to delay you.
Happy I got one more
Yes,
thing. Have we had any luck on the part-time police officer thing? Are we actively looking, or are we?
I would ask the chief if he is still
We
actively
currently
looking.
have 2 part-time employees, staff. Obviously, we're looking for more all the time. We're more concerned about getting a full-time position filled. It's been open for over a year now. But the full-time guys both work full-time jobs, or the part-time guys both work full-time jobs, so they don't work a regular part-time schedule. They just fill in when they can, when we have availability. And as far as the vacation, when we get to full staff, the way our structure will be, we will have a position that's kind of a floating position. So that position will fill those voids for vacation. So there won't be quite the $11,000 payout time and a half if we get to full staff.
But just to give you worst case scenario.
Yeah, we need.
That's what everybody wants to hear. What's the worst case?
Part-time position, so.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Done the meeting?
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.